Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. Let's get right on into it. All right, yep. Old Brett Yormack has served the Big Ten, and Tony Petitti is feeling the fire. I can go ahead and tell you, he has now got 3 against 1, and the national media is starting to turn on him as well, which is really, you could kind of feel it if you've been watching this closely. It's all about the college football playoff and what the Big Ten wants as opposed to what the SEC wants. And the Big 12 and the ACC might be the decision makers, which is crazy because they're not supposed to have any say in this. All they're supposed to be involved in is being heard out. That's it. SEC and Big 10 make the final decision. Well, it feels like it's in the Big 12 and the ACC's hands now, which just shocks the crap out of me. Anyway, you know I never bury the lead, so we're going to get right into this. And Yormack has made it very clear where he stands.
And 5-11 is fair. We want to earn it on the field. It might not be the best solution today for the Big 12, given your comments about AQs. But long term, knowing the progress we're making, the investments we're making, it's the right format for us. And I'm doubling down today on 5-11. And I know Jim Phillips will, and I'm sure some of the other conference commissioners will as well.
Oh, yeah, he's doubling down. Tony, you just got served.
Okay. All right. We got served. So now, I guess, it's on.
Let's just call it what it is. And now it's on. He also brought in the fact that Jim Phillips is going to be there with him as well. So they've clearly spoken. The SEC, Greg Sankey originally, when they met back in February, was on board, it appeared, with the Big Ten and Tony, with the 4-4-2-2-1 plus 3. And here is actually the layout of it. As you can see, this is what the Big Ten wants. The SEC is a huge question mark. Big 12, ACC, they do not want this at all. They don't even want to look at it. They want the 5+11. And you've got 3 conferences that I think are 100% on board now. SEC, I think, is now on board. Big Ten, no, they're really not. I put a question mark because I think they're going to have to probably take a good hard look at this, but they don't like it. And I'm sure Tony's kind of ticked off right now because he knows that's the best system for the Big Ten, and he also knows it'll make the most money for the Big Ten and possibly everybody because he wanted those play-in games, the 3 versus 6, the 4 versus 5, and that would have happened in the Big Ten too. And you got to realize Tony comes from the cable executive world, and he knows how to drive revenue. He has done a fantastic job for the Big Ten getting them money with Fox. They have the best TV deal in the world.
He ain't lying.
As far as TV rights and money to each team, that's why they've caught up with the SEC, and they're trying, well, money-wise, they're ahead. And Sankey is fully aware of that. So here's another opportunity Tony thinks of, hey, you know, these play-in weekends would be huge. And that looks like this, where Texas, well, this is last year, Texas would have played Georgia for the title, and then these 4 teams would have played to see who gets into the playoff, which would have been 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. And in the Big Ten, they would have done the exact same thing, which instead of having a championship weekend that kind of matters, kind of doesn't, because both those teams are already in anyway, you would have 3 ball games, so that triples your revenue, which would be huge for the conferences. And again, for the Big Ten, it guarantees them 4 spots plus possibly another one. Whereas the SEC has kind of seen through this, and they know last year, for example, they would have gotten 6 teams in. Now, we're talking about a 16-team playoff. I know they only got 3 in, but Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina would have all gotten in. And the Big Ten would have still had 4. The 4 they got in, that would have been the 4 that would have been. And the other team would have been Miami. So it makes sense for the Big Ten to want this. And again, he thought he had a deal with Sankey, but here's the thing about Greg. You may think you have a deal, but he's really good at kind of saying, maybe I'll do this, but he never quite goes ahead and shakes your hand and say it's a done deal until it's a done deal. He's a little bit slippery and knows how to do the sidestep.
It's a possible maybe.
Ooh, I love to dance a little sidestep. Now they see me, now they don't. I've come and gone.
Yep, so Tony probably feels duped a little bit. And Sankey, I think, was leaning towards it because he was talking positively about it. But then he got back to the SEC coaches, and they ripped him to shreds because part of that deal was the SEC had to move to 9 games. Instead of playing an 8-game conference schedule, play 9. And we've talked a lot about that. The SEC coaches said, you're crazy. Said, do you understand the schedule that we have every year? You idiot. We're not moving to 9 just because the Big Ten's at 9. Look at the strength of schedule. And I've shown this multiple times now. I did not realize how bad it was. After 12 games last year, which is when you determine the college football playoff, out of the top 12 teams, 11 were SEC. Only Ohio State was at number 8 right there. So the SEC coaches pointed that out to him and said, are you insane? This is what you want us to do? You want us to add a 9th SEC game and add half a loss to every one of our schedules?
Don't you do it! Don't you!
Because the Big Ten doesn't think they have a fair situation? Again, look, one Big Ten team is in the top 12 strength of schedule. Now, granted, the Big Ten's caught up on the top. Their top 3 or 4 teams up there are just as good as any SEC top. And that's happened over the last few years because of NIL and the TV rights deal. But the rest of the conference at the bottom has not caught up with the SEC yet. They might. I'm not saying they won't, but they have not yet. And the SEC coaches are like, look, until this strength of schedule gets a little bit closer, at least even, we're not even going to consider 9 games. You're crazy. And it's hard to argue with that when you look at that, when you look at those numbers. I mean, I got to be honest. I did not realize it was that lopsided during the regular season. So I get their argument. If it was the other way around and there was 8 or 9 teams in the top 12 from the Big Ten and we only had 2 or 3, I'd say, yeah, we need to move to 9. And there's a lot of positives to that as far as viewing. I'd love to have nothing but big-time games. You know, I don't particularly care to play Kent State or, you know, the Tulsa Fighting Possums or whoever we bring in that we give $1 million and beat the crap out of 2 or 3 times a year. I don't care for those games. They're no fun. You just whoop up on them in the first quarter or 2 and then you put in all your backups. But you kind of got to have those games when you have 8 brutal games plus another Power 4, which is typically what the SEC does. And if you're an SEC coach, you're making $6, $7, $8 million a year. You don't want to lose that gig because you added a 9th game just to make the Big Ten happy. And look, the Big Ten are feeling their oats right now. You know, they've won one legitimate national title. That was last year with Ohio State. That Michigan one, it's hard for me to count that. I'm putting a big old giant asterisk next to theirs. Yeah, they won it on the field, but man, the 2.5 years of that sign stealing and that cheating and all that crap.
Allegedly.
I'm about over that crap. Something needs to be done. We're waiting for the NCAA over that, but whew, that's just aggravating. To know that went on for 2.5 years, pitiful, absolutely pitiful.
It's got to be America's team.
Anyway, Tony, you're going to have to make a decision, okay? If you want to go to 16 teams, which is what everybody wants to do, you're going to have to go along with this 5+11 because obviously the ACC and Big 12 want that. The SEC now wants it. And Greg Sankey has talked very strongly about the 5+11. The only conference that doesn't want it is Tony and Big 10. So you do have the option. You can block everything. You can say, we're going to stick with 12 because I'm not getting my way. And since I have 50% of the power and the SEC has the same, I'll just block it, and we'll just stick at 12 until I get my way. I don't think he will go that route because that's, you don't really want to be the pariah of all of college football when you've got all 3 conferences saying this is what, look, Yormack just doubled down. You got served. It's on. You got to make a decision. Do I go along with everybody else in the country, or do we sit up here in the Big Ten and say we're now dominant and we'll control everything, and if we don't get our way, we'll take our ball and go home? He can do that, but I don't think that'd be a very good choice. He's too much of a deal maker for that. I just can't see him. I could see Greg Sankey doing that before I saw Tony Petitti. Sankey's he's a bit of a cuss. You know, he's a little bit, I don't know, he's got a bit of a bully mentality. So I could kind of see him doing that before Tony. Tony doesn't strike me that way. He seems like a pretty much get along type dude. And as I said at the beginning of the show, the national media is starting to turn on the Big Ten and really Tony Petitti more than anybody because he's the architect of the 4-4-2-2-1. And right here, Blake Topmeyer of the USA Today, he says, why the Big Ten desperately wants to rig college football playoff. And in the byline, it says, if it looks like Petitti's playoff plan seems rigged in favor of the Big Ten, that's only because it is. And Petitti was quoted as saying, representing the Big Ten, that's my job. And it is. And Topmeyer says, Petitti wants a playoff format that's all upside, no risk for the Big Ten. And the big issue with the 4-4-2-2-1 is that the Big Ten gets twice as many guaranteed spots as the Big 12 and the ACC. And that's really why those two conferences hate that, because they're admitting by going along with it that they're the little brother. We're half as good as your conference. And that doesn't sit well with the coaches in the Big 12 and the ACC, and it sure as crap doesn't sit well with the commissioners or the athletic directors. So after I thought about that for a while, as an athlete myself, I wouldn't like that. I don't ever want to start off at the beginning and you're admitting I'm half as good. That's just, the mentality of that sucks. And these two conferences realize it, and they're not going to go along with it under any circumstances. They may be forced if the SEC somehow did a 180, but I don't think Sankey's going to do that. But at least they know, hey, if we go down fighting, our fan bases won't blame us and the coaches can't blame us. And the fact that the national media is starting to turn on Tony, that's a lot of pressure. So you've got three conferences plus the national media starting to see this. It's an issue. So there's a lot going against Tony right now. It's a problem. So he'll probably for a few months try to manipulate and try to talk good about the 4-4-2-2-1, and then he'll eventually give up and say, crap, I did the best I could, and he did. I mean, his arguments are not bad, but when you start telling other conferences what they've got to do for you to go along with certain things, they're just not going to do it. And Sankey's in an impossible situation. The coaches have the power. And if you don't think they do, all you've got to know is who's making the most money. Greg Sankey doesn't make near what these college coaches in the SEC make. That's where the power is. You always know where the power is based on salary. If you're Kirby Smart at $13 million, you have way more power than a commissioner that makes, well, actually, let me see exactly what Sankey makes. He makes $4 million, which is really good money. I mean, I was thinking it was 2 or 3. So he makes 4, but Kirby makes 13. Who do you think has more say in the SEC?
It's good to be the king.
There's nobody that makes $4 million as a head coach in the SEC that I'm aware of. They all make more than that. So Sankey is an important dude, and he gets along well with the coaches, but the coaches call the shots, and they work with the athletic directors who make usually $1-2 million a year or something like that, and they work with the coaches. So that's where the power is. I'm sure you're shocked to hear that money calls the shots.
Ain't it peculiar how money seems to do that very thing?
Anyway, that's the update. I think Tony's been cornered, and I don't know that there's much he can do. And I don't think he'll take his ball and go home. Just don't see it. Anyway, if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Lets me know continue to cover all these big college sports stories. If you've not subscribed, boom, 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 hit that button right there. It won't cost you a dime. Help you get my videos. And right over here is the most recent video YouTube thinks you'll enjoy. We'll see you next time on Sports Talk J.
Very good. You know something? No soup for you. Come back 1 year.